Hey guys, what's going on? David Avalon here with Robert Drysdale and with our special guest, Kit Dale, coming all the way from Los Angeles. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Good to have you. Kit's been a long time friend of ours. Like he's done, I think the last ADCC, you prepared at the gym, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And I've known Kit for a while now. It's always fun to watch him. Watch his stunts online, watch his career developing from a grappler to a movie star. That's pretty cool. Come on, he's getting there, man. And a lot of fun, man. So, Kit, tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, how you got here. What was the vision when you first started? Like, how much has that vision changed? Like, more like the background of Kit Dale.
Okay, well, I'll start with when I was a kid. We started. I watched a lot of Bruce Lee movies, so my uncle used to sit me down and tell me about that, and I would pretty much sit there in the shed practicing anything Bruce Lee did. And so I always liked martial arts. I got into karate when I was younger, and then my dad was a big Aussie Rules fan, so he paid me $20 to quit karate just before I was about to go for my blue belt too.
He paid you $20 to quit?
Yeah, he paid me $20 to quit and to play Australian Rules football. Yeah. And I started playing that, but I was very immature physically as well as mentally, and I was a lot smaller than most of the kids, so I was quite shy, and it took me a while to sort of find my feet with sport. And I think until I was about 18 years old, I didn't really do well in football, and then I started doing very well. Yeah. And I ended up playing for one of the best first division teams in the country, and I had opportunities to start going higher. VFL, which is just under AFL, which is the highest level, offered me to come and play with them. And I was kind of at that stage when I decided to move in towards Jiu-Jitsu, which I just started. I was getting beaten up a little bit by some of the bigger players in the league, and I was 21, 22 at that age, and I wanted to learn how to defend myself because I was always petrified of any kind of fight. If there was a fight on the field, like I was nowhere near it. Or if I was kind of like hiding behind other people and stuff. So I wanted to learn how to protect myself. So I found a mixed martial arts gym near where I was working, and I started training with that. And then we did a little bit of jiu-jitsu. And I thought I was going to destroy these dudes because they were little Johnny Pencil pusher looking types. And they destroyed me. So I was like, I really need to learn this. And then about a couple months later, I didn't enter a tournament. I watched a tournament. I had no idea there was even tournaments for jiu-jitsu. I watched a tournament, and there was a guy that was a white belt that was around the same level as me, and he won the tournament as a white belt. So I was thinking, fuck, if he can win it, I should be able to win this as well. Technically, I did win that if I beat him. So I started competing, and the more I competed, the more I enjoyed it. I ended up quitting football to pursue jiu-jitsu. And at first, it was just a goal of, I thought, if I train really hard in 10 years, I could have my own academy and not have to work again. And that would be, very good for me. I hated working.
Doesn't work that way, does it?
Yeah, no.
Everyone has that idea. I'm going to not work ever and just train all day until reality kicks in.
And I had a little bit of a unique start to jiu-jitsu. I think I'm actually really lazy as a person. Unless I'm really interested in what I'm doing, I'm very lazy. And I hated which we'll get into a little bit, I hated the technique side of training. I didn't mind learning the technique. I just didn't like having to repeat it so often. Yeah. I would like to practice it, 5 or 6 times and then get the idea. Then I wanted to try and implement it in live training. So I tended to stay out of the technique side of stuff, and I kind of get there and sit on my phone or wait or just purposely come a little bit late. And then I would get straight into the specific training, which would, someone's got to try and pass your guard, or you got to try and sweep them, and you just keep going like that. And I spent most of my training doing that, and then a little bit of free rolling at the end. But it was only really 35 to 40 minutes of rolling that I would do per session. 1 to 3. No, I think it was 1 to 5 times a week, depending on work and football and stuff. I noticed I started doing really well really quickly, and we're trying to figure it out. It didn't really make much sense to us because I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, okay, everyone else is doing the drills and stuff like that. They're drilling heaps, they're doing a lot more work than me, usually training more than me, but I seem to be excelling quicker. And we had no idea why, but it kept going on like that. I ended up, I won the blue belt Abu Dhabi World Championship that year, the purple belt the year after, I got the silver at the brown belt the year after that, and then I went black belt. And it wasn't until after that I kind of realized that I started looking at case studies for motor learning and stuff like that, for any kind of skill acquisition. that I realized why I was excelling a lot quicker compared to people that were looking at it a bit more traditionally. So I ended up figuring all that kind of stuff out, and then since then I started teaching more, and I stepped away from the competitive side of jiu-jitsu probably 2014. I don't know if I just felt like for where I was, and I was competing at high level black belt, and I was doing well. Like I would get to like the semi-finals of the worlds, and that was about it. But I wasn't losing by much. I would be like to a 5-time world champion where I lose by an advantage or a sweep or something. And I felt like for me to get to the next level, I need to do a lot of cardio and a lot of physical work, which I don't really enjoy doing. And I thought, I liked acting, and ever since I was a little kid, we used to film like little funny skits. Me and my brothers got a little camera, and we would do a lot of comedy stuff, a lot of fight stuff, Star Wars, wrestling. And I thought, I wouldn't mind getting more. And it was just as I hurt my knee too. I hurt my knee. I went back to Australian rules football for like a season to try and, after I quit jiu-jitsu in I think it was the start of 2015, hurt my knee and thought, okay, I can't do jiu-jitsu for at least a year or two because I didn't have the money to have a knee reconstruction. I didn't have health insurance, so I had to kind of wait. I ended up getting into movies. I was really lucky. I got a big role in a feature film quite quickly, which paid for my knee reconstruction, and I got my knee fixed. And then I decided to work more in teaching jiu-jitsu online, which I started the kitdaletraining.com. And I still compete in jiu-jitsu like I was, but it was not like a competitor competes. I think the best training I had was when I come and train with you guys for ADCC. And that was probably 3 weeks of training, you know what I mean? So I was still competing, and I still do compete, but it's, wherever I can get the training and then competing and stuff.
I was going to ask you, going back to the beginning, you said, you started as a child, you were very interested in Bruce Lee, and, you can see that there is a leaning towards combat. Like you were, you felt like a call in that direction. I remember as a child, it was the same thing. It was Van Damme and Bruce Lee, and I did some Hapkido like you when I was a kid, but I couldn't quite get into it. It was too much drilling, and I hated that, like punches in front of the mirrors and like, what is this? I wanted to fight, And then it wasn't until I found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a teenager, right? So I guess like what I'm trying to get at is this like nature-nurture discussion that is so relevant to sports and martial arts. How do you feel about that in regards to, you and because you were in an environment that's like Australians are not known, and now they are like, it's picking up with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it's never been, it's not Brazil or the US, right? It's always been like, especially Brazil, it's always been, for years it's been huge, right? But, you had a leaning towards martial arts, right? Yeah. How much do you believe that is part of Kit Dale, or is it more like a trend, this is cool? Like, how do you feel about that?
No, I think it was a huge part of nurture because it wasn't big in Australia. There was no way I was going to discover jiu-jitsu without, stumbling upon it the way I did. Yeah. And if it wasn't for my uncle, that was a huge influence on me. I had two uncles really and they filmed a lot of their own martial arts, and they were quite good at what they did. There was a lot of like flashier stuff. But I really enjoyed that kind of training, and they were my heroes, so I was always practicing that kind of stuff. I was the same. I loved Van Damme, and I can't remember the other ones, but whoever it was, and I really enjoyed that. And because I was very insecure as a person, I think I really leaned into the martial arts because it made me feel a little bit more confident. I did dabble in some striking as well, but I didn't like getting punched in the head much, so I tended to prefer the grappling side of things. But any family function I went to, there was always a wrestle. It was me. I had two younger brothers. One's a year and 10 months younger than me. The other one's 3 years younger. I had cousins like a year older, 2 years older, 3 years older, and we're all very similar build. So any function we went to, it's like, okay, we're wrestling, and that's it. So it was very easy for me to go the martial arts route, but it was very accidental that I stumbled upon jiu-jitsu because it was very small in Australia at that time, I think.
And what year was that?
That would have been 2008. And I think the only one I heard of that was doing jiu-jitsu was an MMA fighter.
Elvis Anosik?
Not what I did hear about him. There was one other as well, George Soteropoulos.
Oh, okay, yep.
And so when I started, he was like the one they were talking about. Like George was a killer, and he's doing this. And this was before he made his run through UFC. So I had a huge part to do with my upbringing and stuff. Otherwise, there's no way I would have. I mean, it would have been very rare that I would discover jiu-jitsu because, like I said, at that time, it was very small. In Australia now, it's much bigger. And there's a few guys like Craig and Lachlan that are doing really well, leading the way. and Levi as well. Levi Jones, I think it's Levi Jones.
I didn't know he was Australian for the longest time.
Yeah. I think he moved to New York about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
He was training with the
Unity.
So a lot of people didn't know that, but no, he was really good for a long time. He was coming through. He was similar to Craig. We knew he was really good for a long time, and then he got to black belt and just...
he beat Lucas Lepri at the Europeans this year, which Lucas very rarely loses in his division. It's a huge win.
Mm-hmm. Nah, he's really good, really tough. I think he'll continue to do well. I think he's very
young, right?
Motivated and inspired and young.
So how do you feel about the jiu-jitsu scene in Australia? We're seeing this. It seems to be like Craig and Lachlan and yourself and Levi and whatever. The overall scene in Brazilian jiu-jitsu scene in Australia. What is it looking like? How do you feel about it?
Well, it's looking good at the moment. I think it's just going to keep getting better and better. I think Australians are along the same level as athleticism as most tough countries. I think most of them were convicts, so they're used to running and stuff like that. But I think physically we're quite well, a tough nation, and a lot of them, other than me, don't shy away from hard work. And I think because of, I think earlier on myself, Craig and Lachlan doing really well, and Levi, it's given a lot of people a lot of confidence and a lot of motivation where they didn't have that for a long time. And I think with the age of information that we have now online, it's really easy for anyone to get up to date with what's going on. I think I remember when I first started, when I was doing martial arts back in the day, I was doing nunchucks as well. I used to look up nunchuck videos, and there was only one guy that had videos of nunchucks online, and it was so it was 3 megapixels or something, not even megapixels, 3 pixels, and I'm trying to figure out what he was doing. So now it's a lot easier. You can go online. There's so many good instructionals out there. I think they're going to continue to do really well.
So, how did you get connected with Lachlan and with Craig? Did you start off at the same school, or was that later down the road that?
No. So Craig was from South Australia, and he came into it much later. Lachlan I met when I was a white belt originally. He was a brown belt, and I saw him at the first ever competition I did. Was an in-house tournament, and Lachlan was there. So I remember there was another brown belt I knew, and he was really good. And they said, "Oh, this guy's really good." And they were talking about Lachlan. So that was the first time I met him. By the time I got to purple belt, he got in contact with me and said, we should start training. We were from different academies. So we got together and we would train once or twice a week and just roll. And then I ended up, we continued to train until about black belt. I had an academy that I was teaching at as a black belt. And it was at the same time I kind of got burnt out and I really wanted to move away from jiu-jitsu for a while. And I left that academy for Lachlan to take over. So that's what Absolute MMA is right now. It was originally, I can't even remember what we called it. It was something.
I remember you opening the gym, and I remember you had the sticker or the plaque on the wall. Yes. And then I worked with Affinity with what's his name?
Brad
Beidão. They call him Beidão in Brazil.
Is it Brad Owen?
No, I taught a seminary school a while ago. Can't remember. Great. Neil. Yeah, great guy. Yeah. And but then you had that sticker on the wall that says no drilling.
Yeah,
I remember. I just thought it was funny because I feel the same way you do about this. And when the whole drilling thing started, I remember how it started. I've got to drill, right? And I'm going. The people who are talking about drill, I'm not going to mention names, but people are writing books on drilling. I know them for a fact. I've trained with them for years in Brazil, and I've never seen them drill.
Yeah,
I think it's. I'm not. We're going to talk a little more about this, but I always thought it was it's not a necessary, an elementary number to the equation.
No.
I think that there's room for it, and I like some aspects of it. But where did this come from? Why are you so critical of drilling?
Well, like I said, when I was going from white to black belt, so I went from white to black belt in about 4 years with no prior grappling experience. I was trying to figure out, okay, how can I do this, and let's try and replicate the same results. And then when I started looking at case studies, I started discovering that drilling had very little impact in progression. If not, it was more detrimental to progression than what it was beneficial.
Yeah.
I'm allergic to this.
He was an advocate of drilling.
It was like a little bullshit on it.
This is all bullshit.
It's hard to hear this. I started looking at case studies, and I'll explain a little bit about how they went. And they're basically showing that, and I understand why people do it. And I think for some sports and for some areas of work, they're great for like if you're on an assembly line or something where you've got to continue to do the same thing over and over again. It's the perfect way of learning because you don't want to be thinking; you just want to react really quickly. In something like jiu-jitsu that's highly, multi-complex with different people, different personalities, I don't think you're ever going to see the same position exactly twice. There'll be very similar variations, but they're always going to be very different. So anything that's made from muscle memory is great. And I think certain areas like wrestling, like learning how to shoot really quick and stuff like that, I think it can be beneficial for just to start off with, just to get that movement and stuff like that. But jiu-jitsu, without the wrestling, there's not a lot of that isn't necessary because a lot of it's not speed-based. It's timing-based, and a lot of it's very slow and it's methodical. But I understand why people go into that, because when let's say you go from not knowing a technique to practicing a technique, you start off really bad and then you practice it more and more, and you can start seeing tangible progression in your ability to perform that technique with a cooperating partner. And you see the progression, it feels like, okay, I'm getting better and getting better at something, but you don't realize that the crossover into actual skill, acquisition and training isn't like there.
Yeah.
And the case studies showed that they did, there's like 4 or 5 different studies on this. One was basketball, one was a certain hand movement, one was golf, one was baseball. And basically what happened is I'll tell you the basketball one. They had 2 groups separated, and one group practiced, I think it's called a free throw, is it?
Yeah.
A free throw from the
I saw
foul
that
line.
study.
Yep.
You saw this, okay. And the other group did it from multiple areas. Yeah. And during the training, they were all tested at the end. And the group that were doing the
specific,
yes. So the group that was doing the one from the one area, they had a little bit better progression during training than the other group. It was pretty much under them like that. And then they tested it the next day, and the group that was just doing what you would call the drilling of the same technique went down about 60%, and the other group continued to go up. Yeah. And what they kind of discovered is that when you're doing any kind of exercise, you're doing 4 things. You are analyzing the situation. Let's say for basketball, you're looking at the distance of the ring, depending on how tall you are, if there's any wind.
There's that equation going on.
Yes, and you got to figure that out. And then you come up with a solution. Okay, I'm going to execute it using about this much strength and, whatever it is. And then you shoot it. And then you evaluate how you went. Was it a little bit short? Okay, it's a little bit short. So you take that information and you start again with new information.
You learn how to calibrate.
Yes. Yeah. And you do that for the first 3 or 4 until you get one. And then from then on, all you're doing is continuing the body movement. So you're learning the motor functions of it, but there's no neurological work going on. There's no synapses because you've already figured out that equation. Yeah. And then it's just your body. Where the other group was doing everything continuously over and over again. So they developed mentally much more than the other group. So they also developed physically, but mentally as well. So if you look at any kind of like jiu-jitsu, what's one of the main things of getting good jiu-jitsu is, skill acquisition and remembering what's going on. Because if you can't remember what's going on, you're never going to progress, So a big part of that is problem solving. You have to have that problem solving situation that you keep going, because once you get to the end and you analyze your results, you take that information to the start and then you start again. And then you take that information to the start and your knowledge on an area just keeps growing and growing and growing. And they also discovered that your memory system is like a scaffolding system. That the less information you have, the harder it is to learn new information, because we learn by association more than anything else. Okay. It doesn't matter whether you learn kinesthetically, visual, it's how you associate with that information. So if you've got nothing to associate with what someone's teaching you, it's very hard to grasp what's going on. Yeah. And that's why good coaches like yourself use good analogies. Yeah. You use certain analogies that people know about so they can associate new information. The more information you have on something, the easier it is to learn new stuff. So I think with specific training being, one of the best tools of learning, because you're in a confined environment and it's a safe place to practice something in a certain area, you're going to keep developing more and more information and understand not just like what you're doing, but why you're doing it, which is much more important than how.
And it teaches you how to think. I like going back to the other thing we're talking about, the calibration, because I saw that study and I remember drawing the same conclusions. It's like if people do things specifically, it's like they plateau because there's no stimuli. Mm-hmm. It's the variety of stimuli that makes you teach how to think, how to adapt. And jiu-jitsu is a lot about improvising, like you were saying. No 2 situations. Like, for example, I can grapple with Dave every day, And it kind of like we do end up in the same situations over and over. Kind of like when we fought. It was just like, even then when we grappled, it was like a replay the one time we fought. Because like I can't sweep him, he can't pass, whatever. We keep doing the same things over and over. But it's never identical.
No.
It's never identical. And I think that it's the variety of stimuli and teaching your body how to think on the spot and improvise on the spot is what makes good grappling.
Yeah.
And that's not something easy to do. Like it's something that comes with a lot of practice. And I have my doubts if the kind of drilling that people do is beneficial for that. I do like some kinds of drilling, and we can talk. I'm sure Dave knows because he comes from wrestling, so they have, and that I like. The way wrestlers drill, I like. But I see some people doing some of the, you guys, everyone's going to recognize this, where one of them's laying down, the other one puts one hand on each knee, and they kind of skip left and right. Yeah. And I'm watching people do that. I'm going, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for over 20 years, and never have I ever seen any guard get past that way. 22 years jiu-jitsu, never seen it. But people drill it, and they like just skip their feet left and right. And I'm watching that, I'm going, you're just frying their nervous system. That has the benefit to your jiu-jitsu as the same as jogging has. Like jogging benefits your jiu-jitsu. You're moving your feet, you get a little cardio, but there's no technical improvement.
No. Yeah. I think, and there's two things that I want to mention before I ask you about the American drilling, because I work with a lot of Russians, and I like the way they drilled as well. And it was more of a problem-solving based drilling. Yeah. But there's two things that are really important to understand. There was a recent study by, I'm not going to mention it, I do have it on my phone, but she figured out that it takes around 400 repetitions to create synapses in the brain. But if you do it playfully, it only takes about 12. So, you can practice something, over and over again, or if you can do it in a playful manner, or like a problem-solving manner, you're going to absorb it in a much faster time. The other big part of this, which most people don't know, is the amygdala, which is the part of the brain called the lizard brain, that's the fight or flight part of the brain, has a huge role in storing information. It basically decides how deep to store information. It decides whether you store something for a couple, seconds. Like if I'm on the phone with you, I need to know a code, and you tell me the code, and I can punch it in, and then 7 seconds later, that code's gone. That's all I need it for. But jiu-jitsu, you want to retain all that information as much as you can. And they figured out that the more emotionally aroused you are, the deeper you store information.
It means more.
Yes.
So your amygdala interprets it as more valuable information.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes perfect
sense.
So
if you look at drilling compared to specific training, there is very little emotional value in drilling. You're kind of doing it over again. You're just thinking about it. When you're doing specific training, there's high stakes. Yeah. You're sitting there, okay, I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to get submitted. I don't want to, or rolling either way. But it's much, I can guarantee if I ask both you guys, when the last 3 times you got submitted, you'd have a very good idea where they were. You know what I mean?
Because it means something.
Because it means something. I hate it. I remember exactly.
I remember it was like 1986.
I saw a wife and people beat me in practice. I guess store that information, write it down in a little book.
Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of books on it now that really explain it a lot better than what I can articulate it. But it's an evolution of learning now, which we pretty much use to learn everything. It's all problem solving.
And learning to me is a mystery in a lot of ways, because think about a class, right? I get 20 people in the class, right? I show them, let's say, an armbar from guard, an uchimata, whatever move. It's the same information. It's given to every single individual in that group, right? Mm-hmm. Some people get it without drilling. Mm-hmm. No one ever taught me a guillotine or a darce. Mm-hmm. I saw a guillotine. I was like, that makes perfect sense. Got it, Mm-hmm. And then some people, they just have a hard time absorbing information. Now, it's the same amount of data. And why is it that for some people that the absorption of information takes such a higher precedence than it does over other individuals? And I think you just hit the nail on the head when you're saying there's an emotional attachment to that information. It means something to you, right? Like, this is important stuff. I got to learn this. Like, it's the guy that thinks about berimbolos all day, drills berimbolos all day, watches a million videos on berimbolos, dreams about Rafael Mendes and Mike Musumeci, and then he's blown away that the next day he's hitting berimbolos. I'm like, see, it's the drilling that did it. It's like, no, it's the emotional attachment to the move. It means so much to you. You would actually hold on to that information.
Socrates said that. He had the Socratic method, which was key to learning anything, is questioning why. If you keep questioning why and you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you're going to come to a truth in the end, and you're going to have so much knowledge on that. I remember Craig Jones, before he blew up, he would sit there and I'd come to class and he was there already, and he'd be scissoring some other dude trying to figure out different things. And he'd go like, Kit, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And his knowledge on that was far greater than mine. So I'd be like, well, it looks good to me, But he was consistently sitting there and trying to figure things out. And, why does this work? Why does this, why is this effective? Yeah. And I think if people have that
Curiosity.
Good, that's the word I'm looking for. They're going to get good at whatever they're doing, whether it's acting, whatever it is. You've got to have that curious personality to really think like why. When I was starting, I was never really too interested in how to do something. Some people, when you teach something and someone will be like, what if this happens? What if that happens? That was never me. I was always like, why would I do that? Why do we do that? Because I thought it was more important to figure out why we're doing that. And then you can kind of figure out the timing and stuff. I'm really interested to hear about the American drilling as well.
Okay. So, again, wrestling, and again, I'm not like a college or a world-class wrestler. Wrestled in high school, 3 years. But I've been to
good wrestler, though, I know.
But I went to college camps and whatnot. And I have an idea of how they do it, at least. And for me, there's a few parts of it. One, you have just like you're saying, you're doing a specific drill to build speed, technique, power, right? Like very first day of wrestling, you're doing shots all over the place, and you'll do it in a variety of ways. One of them, you'll just do the lunge. So if you're not familiar, heel toe knee touches the ground, power step drive, and you're gonna do that on the mat. And then they'll give different accents to it. Like they'll say, okay, now I want you to shoot it as fast as possible. And then another time, I want you to shoot as deep as possible. Mm-hmm. So a different emphasis is what I was talking about, right? So we're focusing on different parts of the technique. Then you get a partner. Now do it against a partner. Now a partner gives you 50% resistance. Now a partner is going to do this specific counter, and you're going to work against it, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of like you're talking about the specific training, I call it situational training, right? Mm-hmm. Like we create a situation, now respond to it. And I find that to be very helpful, just like you're saying, because you're getting a lot of exposure to a particular position quickly. Mm-hmm. If we were just doing free rolling, we might get there once or twice. Mm-hmm. But if I do a specific drill, now I get there 100 times in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that experience is going to allow you to innovate faster.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I think that's great as well. That's not the drilling that I'm against.
You're talking about more repeating the same thing.
Just the same repetition. But even for a situation like that, I think it's important to do that because it's a very alien position for most humans. I mean, most people are going to avoid sitting there on their knees because it's not very comfortable, a lot of times. I think it's important to force someone into that position to become more comfortable for that. So I think there's also, even if you were just doing the static repetition of it, there's certain things that I feel like, well, it's not going to be too bad because you're going to need to get in that position. There may be, and I haven't even thought about it, there may be more beneficial ways of doing it, but I don't have an issue with that. It's more like once someone can do it and execute it, and then they just continue to do it on and on and on, and like more for jiu-jitsu situations that I see that bother me the most. But like I feel like once you can get your head around a certain position, then you've got to start playing with it live and start figuring out, like we said before, with the problem solving, start developing more information on that rather than just focusing on the technique. And I think a lot of people, they fall down the wrong hole of like, They see a technique, they see, Rafael Mendes or something do something, and they think, okay, if he's done that, that's the best technique, so I've got to do it. Yeah. But they don't realize there's so much information in Rafael's head as to why he's doing that. Like he's taking in so much information, and then he executes that. And people see the tip of the iceberg of like, oh, that was the technique, but they don't realize that under that iceberg is this huge amount of information that they're never going to have. Yeah. So they kind of read the cover of the book. They practice, they just keep repeating the cover, but they never read the whole fucking book.
Now, the drilling itself, like you just said, I see, you do one of your sweeps, and then, okay, I'm just going to do that. And I do it in a closed environment, and that's all I do. Not super beneficial. I'll get better at it, but without feedback, I'm not growing. So to me, the drilling is a crucial part of the training, but it requires a feedback element, which to me is situational training or sparring. Yeah. Because I'm going to do that same technique on you, and then something's going to happen. Yeah. Maybe it works, maybe it didn't, maybe you countered because I messed up. And then I have to come back in and, okay, analyze, observe why did that happen, fix the mistake, and then I drill the new iteration of this move. Because to me, the idea behind drilling is to build proficiency. So you're building speed, you're building strength, you're building power, and depending on the type of drilling you do, timing can come in there as well. Right? But by itself, it's not a solve-all. Right? I can't just get a book and a sparring dummy and do techniques all day and become a world champion. Like I know I need the feedback so I can auto-correct. Yeah. So to me, that's a big part of it. Now, like some stuff like you're saying, like wrestling, I think drilling is very crucial to it because of the brutal nature of wrestling. Yeah. You don't see a lot of 40-year-old wrestlers. Right? Because all the throws, all the slams, and generally wrestlers don't break fall because it's not good for them. They get scored on if they break fall. So they're doing hand posts behind their back, and you're gonna bust a shoulder, bust an elbow. So what the drilling allows you to do is get a very good workout that's specific to the type of motions you're gonna do in a live situation without the injury risk.
Yeah.
Because
Controlled.
it's a controlled environment. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what you're gonna do. We're not gonna, like I've never been hurt drilling. Right? And I would drill for. I know this is a nightmare. I'm telling you out here, but I would drill for like an hour on end, and I would pick.
Sounds boring.
When I would prepare for ADCC, I would say it was like 80% drilling, right? But it wasn't. It was we were focusing on specific situations, right? Like I know, okay, I need to work on attacking the back and either exposing hooks or getting a finish. Mm-hmm. So we would orchestrate a sequence. I would shoot, you would sprawl, spin, take my back. I would roll, try to get a knee bar. You would counter, and then I would do this. Mm-hmm. And it was orchestrated, but then we would do it at 100%. Yeah. So it felt like alive, but it was a lot safer because I knew what was going to happen. You knew what was going to happen, and we would go through this sequence. And we would always vary the situation. Okay, the next day we're going to add this twist to it, and then the next day another twist to it. And those drill sessions were brutal. They were the most exhausting thing ever. And like you said, going into it, you're like, oh crap, all right. You gotta really psych yourself up because a lot of people when they drill, I know what Rob hates this too, is like they're like, okay, and hey, how was your work today? Oh me too. Like no, that's BS, right? That's not drilling. To me that's kind of useless. To me, the drilling is 100% intensity. So you're going at it, and it would be back and forth, and we would do like 100 reps each, just boom, 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 boom.
You know this the control thing you mentioned. Don't quote me on this because I'm no Jigoro Kano historian, but I've heard that when he invented katas for longevity.
Yeah.
He wanted when you're in the 40s, 50s, 60s, continue to practice without getting thrown on your head live all the time, which is not realistic when you reach that age, right? Yeah. So that's why he invented kata as a way to keep your technique sharp and still practice. I've been getting judo katas, but they're actually getting thrown, but it's all controlled, like you described. It's coordinated. Yeah. It's something that it's almost like, there's a coordinated sequence that we go back and forth on, right? Mm-hmm. Which makes sense. I think going live I think wrestling and judo in general are very damaging to the body. Yeah. I think that's one reason why they drill so much, because if they went live all the time, it's kind of like Thai fighting. If you went live 100% every day in Thai fighting, you would have a 2-year career. You'd be done. Whereas Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has the advantage of I can go live with you guys 100%. And you might get hurt here and there. It's going to happen, but it's nothing like wrestling, Thai boxing, some of these other martial arts. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is controlled enough on the ground that you can clash with someone at a high intensity, at a high pace, and not get injured every day.
Yeah. With what you were saying, the fine line I find in that situation is subconsciously we absorb information with everything we're doing. Like some of it's conscious, most of it's subconscious. So if we're doing a sequential pattern, even if you've predetermined, okay, this is what's going to happen, it's 100%. Your body is going to absorb information in that and react according to that situation. And a lot of the time, you don't want to the fine line is you don't want to start absorbing stuff that's going to make you react in an instant the wrong way. Like let's say he shoots for your leg and your reaction was to sprawl, he goes around to your back and it does something else. But what happens if you practice that so much that you start reacting like that, he shoots for your leg, he starts picking these things apart. Okay, I know when he shoots for my leg, he's practiced so much that he automatically sprawls, so I'm going to fake shoot for leg straight to the headlock or something like that. I think people can start getting figured out a lot quicker, that drill a lot more because they have developed patterns that are that you don't have complete control over. And sometimes it might be right. It might be the most common situation that happens, which with someone that's not I would call a tactician, is a specialist, and then there's a kind of tactician. The tactician will try to figure you out. A specialist will just do what they do. Correct. And I think with the tacticians like myself, will start trying to predict certain patterns that people do, and they start figuring that out. And for me, it's always the longer I've rolled with someone, the better it's been for me, because I figure those kind of patterns out. And generally, the people that drill more have more of those patterns, and I would see that with like, you go to like different, I got to go like, as travel over the world, and you see like there's one instructor that's like, he's a De La Riva guy. Then they're all just De La Riva guys, just under, they're practicing the same thing because that's all they've been taught there, or they just, learn by example. I like, if I was to do what you were doing, what I would spend more time doing is, let's say someone starts on a single leg, and then we go, and then I've got to try and figure it out and like try and work these things out, and he takes me down. And what I found that was really beneficial with this style is every bit of the information is real. It's there's nothing like, I'm not telling, okay, you do this now, I want it to be real. And to do that, you've obviously got to have good partners. If I was training with guys that weren't that good, I'm probably going to have to do what you were saying. Okay, just sprawl like this, because this is what most people are going to do, just in case they're just flopping back. But every bit of live information and all the whole loop of feedback is all real. And what I would do is I would start in that leg, and at first I would suck, and they would sprawl out of me on guillotine or whatnot. But then after a while, I'd start figuring that, if I bring my shoulders up here, it's harder to get guillotined. If I hold my hands like this instead of like this, it's easier on my arms. And you kind of start figuring out these little things that make everything a lot easier. And then I got to the point where I know that if I get 80% or 90% of people on that single leg, I'm going to take them down, and I'm not going to get submitted. So then I'm like, okay, well now I've got the confidence to know that if I get that single leg, I'm going to take them down. So then I would figure out creative ways of getting to that single leg, where I feel like most people start from the shooting part, and they shoot and they get sprawled on, squished. Or if they got the leg, they just get destroyed, and they lose a lot of confidence. Like, why am I going to shoot? Because he's going to sprawl on my face. But I feel like you can kind of hack that by starting at the back end of something. And like it could be even taking the back. It could be like submitting someone from the back. And you get like, kids are great with this. I know another instructor that's got great kids, and what he does is he'll like start them on the back. They get so good at choking that they like, I want to get the back because I know I'll finish them. So they get so creative and they've figured out their own little ways of finding the back.
You see, the confidence is a huge element. Like once you start believing, and that's why it's so important that you actually get that repetition, like a confidence choking someone out. I feel that some of my biggest leaps in jiu-jitsu, and this is contrary to what a lot of people believe in, was training with the same person over and over and over. And the reason for that is like we'd reach these roadblocks. It's like a stalemate. But that would force me to elevate the bar in that position to the point where I was so confident when I got that. That's when you develop a game, so to speak, right? I'm in your half guard every day. Can't pass. I figure something that outdoes your half guard. It's an arms race, right? You figure something out that stops that pass and so on. So now the bar has been elevated so high in that specific situation. When I go to competition, I'm like, you're Roger Gracie doing this choke right here. Literally. Yeah. This choke right here. It's the first thing you learn as a white belt. I
100% agree. I wanted to say it myself. I'm glad you did. I think that a lot of people, and it's a misinterpretation that competition is a dictator of who the best grappler is. It's not really, because you can have, let's say you guys train together every day and you develop so much information on a particular area, but then I've worked on something very different that you've never seen before, and I come into competition, I choke you straight away. Does not mean I'm the better. Yeah. It's just something that you're unaware of, and you haven't. But if we train together, you figure that kind of stuff out, and then suddenly it's very different. I think that people, for example, like at the ADCC on the weekend, Lockie comes in there, works a specific attacking on the legs. I know he was working on a different sort of style of it, and the guys he's fighting are unbelievably good guys, and if you put like their records compared to Lachlan's, they're much higher level.
Yeah, big time.
But Lachlan found a tiny little area that they allowed him to play in, that Lachlan has better, more experience and better leg locks than what they do, so he can take advantage of that. And competition is exploited, everywhere like that. You'll see some guy come in, like Craig when he first came in, destroyed everyone on the leg locks. People start figuring it out. Now he's still doing really well, but he's had to evolve and change different things. So I think it's 100% what you said is perfect. Is you need someone that you get to hear, and then they change, and you keep evolving, and then you're using the Socratic method of why can't I pass this to get more and more information, and then obviously you look at the best teams. And this is where I think people get really mistaken, and I'm not going to name names, but they say this guy is the god of teaching and stuff like that. Look at all these guys there. I'm like, okay, look at them all. This guy started here, this guy started here, this guy started there. They're all black belts, and they come together, and they're all getting really good now. So you put them in the same environment, they're going to be forced.
It's funny because I like that you brought this up, because to me, like the whole the goat thing. That seems to be a term. I didn't even know what that was like 6 months ago. Like every time I go on Instagram, there's goat this and goat that. And it is like a dictatorship where people, we tend to think in hierarchies. That's how humans are. We set a hierarchy of the best submission. It's a typical white belt question, right? What's the best takedown? What they're really saying is like, I really want to have this much information. I don't want to hold on to all that other stuff that's too much, right? What's the best one? So we have this obsession with all these things like the best coach or the best technique or the best fighter. Talk about how you feel, because I have a suspicion you guys are going to agree with me on this one, is how arbitrary that is to name someone like the best of all time. Because when you really think about it, there's so much going on, and it varies so much over time, and it's so unfair with the second place, which sometimes is like half a second slower than the first place. No one remembers second place, and he's just as good. He might be even better. But he had he got an argument with his girlfriend that morning, and that kind of ruined his day. But no one's going to remember that guy, even though he was only like half a second slower or whatever.
I said the same thing when Hodger beat Buchecha, maybe 2 years ago when they had that super fight.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, Hodger's so much better than Buchecha. Like, listen.
Yeah.
You know, he got into a good start, and he finished and he did well. And like, Hodger's amazing. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's definitely one of the best ever. It's not like, it doesn't mean as much as what people think.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been saying, when I fought Gary Tonin in Metamoris, and he guillotined me really quickly and just got it good. And I got, people just like, man, Kit sucks. Like, crap. I guarantee if we rolled more, it would change a lot. It would evolve something very different. He's a great grappler, and I'm not trying to say that I beat him or anything like that. But the outcome is very different to, what's really going on. And like you said, there's so many different little things that and you could shoot and slip on a little bit of sweat, and that's why you didn't get your leverage, and suddenly he's on your neck. Or
you got a silver Olympic medal,
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot going on there, and people, I think fans in particular, especially like the beginners, they tend to be less mature in this regard, and they make a lot of judgments based off of these small pieces of information, or clearly this person is much better than the second place because he finished him in 10 seconcs. Yeah. That's how dominant he is. Like, it doesn't work that way.
People are so fickle, and especially if you see like an MMA, like if someone gets knocked out, it's like, oh, he's done. Yeah. Like Whitaker just lost a fight, and now there's people like, oh, he sucks, he was exposed, but he was never really any good. Adesanya was a true champ. Like, good sakes, man.
Let's insult MMA fans, but they tend to be the less educated too. Like, it's poor. Like, they're most opinionated. There's a quote that I love. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time by Bertrand Russell, and it goes like this: "The problem with the world is that smart people are full of doubt, and stupid people are full of confidence." Isn't that way? It's like, I felt like when I was a blue belt, that's when I was the most confident about my jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
When I was a blue belt, I was like, I got this. I got like 5 half guard sweeps. I'm good. But as you get better, that's when you're like, oh man, like, you put your humble hat on and you learn these lessons, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like MMA fans are probably the worst example. Because they're so opinionated.
Yeah.
And they've never stepped foot in the gym.
The thing is, it's also easier to follow, right? Like a sport like jiu-jitsu is a lot more complicated. If I just grab the random guy and like, okay, explain what's going on between Musemi and whoever else doing Barimbalos, they have no idea.
Yeah.
So they can't really comment as much, and they're not going to probably watch. So like the only people watching are, like you said, people who actually train. So they're knowledgeable, so they tend to be a little better as a fan, Whereas in MMA, anybody can watch it and say, oh, that guy's punching him, he's winning. And pretty much that's how the judging works. Oh, the guy's on top, he's winning. Right? So I think that's why we'll get a lot of knuckleheads that just don't really know what's going on, and they'll just say whatever they think.
I think that it's a way of compensating their lack of depth and analysis, is that they will try to compensate by being very, very confident to make it sound convincing.
Yeah.
Because you know how people are. If I speak with confidence, sometimes you can say the most obnoxious things. When you speak with confidence, people they tend to believe, because a lot of times people aren't analyzing what you're saying. They're looking at body language, the tone of your voice, eye contact. That's how con artists get away with this. They'll look you in the eye and they'll tell you exactly what you want to hear, and they sound so convincing. It's like you shut off your analytical brain and you let your, you emotionally you want to listen to that. You want to absorb that. You want that to be true, right? So you fall for it. And I think that I almost feel like people that are overconfident about their statements about fighting in general, it's a way of making up for the fact that they haven't given a lot of thought.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the new Joker film. Anyone seen it?
No, I want to see it.
Okay. When you see it, you'll see there's a similar thing in that where, I didn't want to say it now because I don't want to ruin it for you, but you'll see the same theme in that where a lot of people just follow someone for the wrong reasons and not really know why.
Yeah.
And sometimes these guys don't even mean to be, leaders, and they're not really they say, like, I could say something and have no meaning to it, and someone takes it and go, but Kit said this and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I was fucking high when I said that. And I don't smoke around, but it could have been. I was saying it in context, and people do this all the time in politics or in social media. They take something you said completely out of context, and then that's what they judge you by and stuff like that. It's just a horrible situation, and I feel like you guys are spot on with that. Anyone can follow mixed martial arts because anyone knows what a fight looks like. So most of the people that are following have never done it. Most people are not going to sit there and follow and comment on jiu-jitsu if they've never done it because it looks messy and not very enjoyable unless you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in MMA it's simple enough for people to understand.
Yeah.
You're getting punched in the head, you're losing. If you're punching, you're winning. It's very, generally speaking, in their minds, which is normally the truth. If you're on top, you're winning. If you're bottom, you're losing, and so on. Where jiu-jitsu tends to be far. I mean, my mom was been following my career. Like, till this day, she has no idea who's winning. Like, you can push his like, I know you're supposed to tap. That's about it. That's her problem.
He was on top.
Yeah. But yeah, jiu-jitsu tends to be complicated.
With what you said, and I feel like we could all probably associate with this as competitors. It's very frustrating because a lot of people don't see what's going on behind the scenes. I've had matches where I haven't trained all month and I've had to compete. I've been injured. You've had injuries. You've had surgeries and injuries. It's really tough because you know that these guys are sitting there and judging. It doesn't matter what you've done. You go out there and you make one mistake out there, you suck. Is he even relevant anymore? Why do we listen to him? They don't really realize that, hey, my elbow's not straightening or bending anymore. My left knee, I've got no cartilage in this left knee. I've had surgeries. I've got, I don't have that. You're looking at, and look, Nicky Rod's a great example of this, where it doesn't have a lot of jiu-jitsu, great wrestling, physically amazing.
Very athletic, yeah.
And you put him with a guy that's much better than him technically, but without that physicality, and he's still going to make him look shit. You know what I mean? He's going to destroy him, and then people be like, "Oh, that guy sucked." Like I think people saying about Cyborg, Cyborg sucked and stuff. It's like, no, it's not.
It's so disrespectful.
Yeah,
man. It blows my mind, But yeah, man, I think that I always remind myself, like, beware of the little man. Like sometimes it's the highly opinionated people in the sport. Like I try to, I think majority of fans that they're very opinionated like that. But you just gotta. I tell myself not to take it too seriously. They're probably mostly white belts. I
think you do a really good job of that. I watch, I sit there and look, and I try not to comment or like anything as well. But I think you do really good on just being. I
bite my tongue. Actually, I think that the way to talk to trolls in general is to try to be respectful and understand their position and try to explain to them why they're wrong. Mm-hmm. And I find that a lot of times when I do that, I unarm them because they want to talk shit, and I'm not good at talking shit. I suck at it. I did it once with I'm not going to mention his name. But I can't. I'm not good at it. It's not something. If I were, I would probably avoid it anyway. But I think that's what as you're a personality, and I feel that a lot of people are going to attack you regardless of how well you do in your life, and you know what I'm talking about. But I think the best way to deal with this is just to be respectful and try to understand their position and explain to them as reasonably as possible why they're wrong.
Yeah, you see straight away they inbox you and they become your best friend.
That happens all the time. Yeah. The next thing you know, they're messaging me. Next thing they're like, I want to take a private from you.
Yeah.
And this guy was like talking mad shit to me.
Yeah. It happens all the time. And because sometimes when people are going, they just want the attention. And I've had people who talk crap and then, just like Rob saying, I've always used that same approach. I kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
Right? And then they're like, oh, I was just joking, or I didn't mean that, or oh, I'm really actually a fan of yours, or it always changes, right? Like, and if people want to start shit with you and you're not engaging with them, it's like punching air.
Yeah.
It loses steam really fast. It's like, I wanted a conflict and this guy's not giving it to me. Yeah. I'm going to move on now. You know?
I used to frustrate. I've been a hater as well. I know what it's like to be on the other end of that, and you see people doing really well and you feel just so insecure by their success. So like you go in there and you'll write something to hope that it puts them down a little bit, makes them feel a little bit more like you. And
instead
it's
of elevating yourself, trying to bring the person.
Yeah, you're trying to bring them down. And so now being in the other position, and at first it wasn't, like I didn't really react well at first. Anytime someone attacked me, I'd attack back, and I would try and try and get one over them and embarrass them, or But now I try and just either ignore them, and it's a lot easier to ignore, or try and reply kindly. And I get this all the time. Yeah, it's really fucking. People think it's easy to react and think that it's like it's not. That's like. It's easy to react. It's
like meditation. It's a form of meditation. It's an exercise. It's training. That's what I tell myself sometimes. If I can keep my composure when I'm about to lose it, it's like a form of mental training. Like I'm making myself more in control of because I would love to be in complete control of my emotions. I'm not. But I strive for that. Like I think emotion has a place in everything you do. It's normal and healthy to get angry sometimes. I think there's a reason why nature that programmed us with all these like things like anger. Like I think they do play a role in society, but I would like it to be something I control entirely. So when I see these challenges, it's almost like it's training. It's hard training. Biting your tongue when someone's attacking you and insulting, especially when they're full of it and you know they're full of it. It's like lifting heavy weights, man. Just making you stronger.
Yeah, you know, and at the end of the day, what people say to you are generally, I don't know, this is a little metaphysical, but I think it's just a reflection of their own opinions on themselves that they draw on you. You know, so I always felt like the martial arts in general is about self-mastery, right? And that means using yourself as the barometer of your skill and who you are as a person. Like you can't tell me who I am, right? That's something only I can do. So if you're gonna talk crap about me, it doesn't really bother me, right? If you allow other people's opinions to affect you, you'll never be at peace. Because it doesn't matter who you are, there's always someone that hates you.
Yeah.
I mean, even Jesus, I was about to say, even Jesus Christ. You know?
I tell myself that. Mahatma Gandhi was a pretty nice guy. He got killed by his own people. And all he talked about was peace. And he still killed them. So,
you can't win that argument. So that's what you require for self-validation, and you need other people to give you the validation. You're going to be miserable for your whole life.
Yeah.
You know, like you need to be able to
self-realize. Because at the end of the day, man, and I'm sure you guys will agree with me, like you're spending 100% of your day with yourself. And if you're not content with what's in there, it doesn't matter what the world thinks of you. If they think the world of you or absolutely nothing of you, it makes no difference because you spend 100% of your day with yourself. You got to look inside and go, I'm completely happy with what's in there.
Yeah.
Right? And what you're not happy about, you got to change. And then we're all working on that. I got many things about myself I'm sure you guys are working on, right? But I think that's what it comes down to. So like that's why I tell myself, like, no, don't take it too seriously, which sometimes I think we all do. Like there's things that, that everyone's got a button.
Yeah.
And I have my own buttons, but like it's something that I think like it's a martial artist's journey. Like it's part of your evolution. And the beautiful thing is I thought martial arts was only about technique, but now I see this other side of like it's about improving on yourself because you're constantly confronted with these situations, and they have to do with controlling your emotions. Competition is one aspect of this, right? But there's so much more going on as far as your development as a human being.
I think a lot of people struggle with understanding that, not just in sport, in acting especially, like anything that you're praised for what you do, and then suddenly, and it's always going to dissipate. For example, like you can do really well. When I first come into Jiu-Jitsu, I had a lot of praise because I come out of nowhere and I was one of the first Australians to do really well, and I would do a lot of comedy stuff, so they liked me. And then when I started moving away from jiu-jitsu and I wasn't doing as well, I wasn't competing as much, suddenly like you don't have that kind of respect that you used to get that made you feel really good. Like a lot of like my confidence at the beginning was superficial because it was based on my environment, who was talking to me, who was saying these things about me. And I think actors have a very similar situation when they're doing really well in a big movie and they're suddenly a star. And then they haven't had a movie for 5-6 years and suddenly no one really cares as much about them, and they start doing drugs or partying or anything that gives them that kind of high that they used to get. And I think it's important, and I'm hoping that anyone that's watching that's going through that progression or in any area of life understands not to get too attached to that because we'll always fade. And if you get attached to that, you're going to get attached to the opposite when it does come. I think it's important to enjoy it.
It becomes an addiction.
Yeah.
It is like I compare a lot of these feelings, these attachments you're talking about to a drug like crack.
Yeah.
Crack must feel incredible because people get on it, they can never get off.
He must have been doing it to be doing drilling like that, man.
But like I'm sure that there's a reward to that, but there's a cost as well, right? And this is where when I'm talking about being in control, like that's what I'm talking about. It's like not allowing anything that is addicting to be out of your control.
Yeah.
And sometimes I see like guys like Connor doing stuff like throwing a trolley at a bus or something, and I think it's intentional. I think he knows exactly what's going to happen. He knows he's going to lose out on money, but he's so addicted to the headline. He's got to do something.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't be fighting every month. You can't do it. Right. He's going to fight once a year, once every 2 years, whatever. But he wants to get a headline every week.
Yeah.
So for you to do that, you got to get married to a new celebrity every other week. You got to be beating someone up, breaking something, like stirring shit up. Because if you were acting like a normal human being, normal is not entertaining.
Yeah, right. I think 100%. Because I was thinking that the other day. I'm looking at him and I'm like, he's got so much money now. Doesn't need to worry about money. He's already solidified himself as one of the greatest martial artists. Why is he still fighting? And I was trying to think, I was like, he doesn't need the money. He doesn't. So it is, you hit it on the head right there. Yeah.
I think Jim Morrison said, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, like, fame is like an addiction. You know it's killing you, but you can't get rid of it either. Yeah. And it was like it was destroying him. He knew it, but he was like so deeply addicted to it at the same time.
It is like, it's enticing. I like if I walk somewhere and someone's like, "Hey, can I get a photo with you?" Man, it feels good. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I got to try. Like, I've tried now to not, get attached to that. And I know, especially because I've had like the success in jiu-jitsu, and now I'm going into film, and I know as that builds up, that's going to be amplified 100 times. There's a lot more people watching film than what there is in jiu-jitsu right now. And I really got to make sure I stay onto that, because I know that could definitely lead me down the wrong hole.
You know one thing that really helps? I've never been in that situation, but I would imagine is having a solid network of people around you, kind of reminding you who you really are, putting you back in your place every now and then. I mean, it could be a wife, a brother, a dad, a mom, like someone you can trust and kind of like bringing you back to earth. Because I feel like a lot of people that go down that rabbit hole are people that have the wrong people around them. Mm-hmm. I'm a bit like that. Like, if I have the right people around me, I feel like the sky's the limit. Anything I do, there's nothing I can't do, right, in my head. Mm-hmm. And then when I have the wrong people around me, I feel like impotent, man. Like, I'm crippled. Like, I can't. To me, that sort of emotional connection is super important to me. And I've been in situations in my life where when the right people are around me, dude, like, I'll win ADCC. Mm-hmm. The wrong people around me, man, like, my life just goes down in a spiral. And me and Dave talk about this, like the social aspect of anyone's career, not just fight. I'm sure it's the same in acting, music, whatever you do. It's such an important element of the equation. Like people don't talk about it a lot, but like there's this whole foundation behind anyone successful that people don't always see. Uh-huh. Like, how do you? Do you feel you're a very successful guy in jiu-jitsu now and acting, and how do you feel about that?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's like something that you never get taught, you don't understand, and it's so important. And it's been really difficult for me. I've been traveling for the last couple of years. I've been in LA now for a year, which has been great. And it's the same sort of thing. You're meeting new people. And LA is very different to most areas in the world. It's because most people have moved there and they want to make something of themselves. And the number one commodity in LA is, who do you know? How much money do you have? So everyone's pretending to have a lot of money and pretending to know everyone and be able to help you.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
I fell for that a few times. Those are the worst people in the world. When they're acting like they have it, those are the worst guys.
Always. So it's a bit of a filtering system right now of like who's genuine and who's not.
Yeah.
And I've, currently doing that at the moment. But before that was traveling around the world, which is, it's great for the experience, but it was very hard to have the right people around me. And that's why for the ADCC, which is the last competition I ever trained for 2 years ago, I went to you guys to have the right people around me. And I did really well. I was very happy with that. I was unlucky. I had Homolo first round. We went overtime. I felt like I was winning the match. And then, he ended up putting me in a crank and breaking one of my teeth. No, it's amazing. But I felt like I could have, done quite well in that competition. Yeah. And because I had you guys around me to help. If I didn't have that, there's no way I would have done it as well.
And it's crazy how important that is. I'm sure, like Dave, we talked about this, like how him and his brother were, your father seemed to be pretty present too. Like I've always felt like I've done better. Like I was saying, like I've always done better whenever I had that coach or that person next to me. And it's crazy because like fighters, I've cornered a lot of MMA fighters at the highest level, and even though they're the toughest human beings I know in a lot of ways, like a lot of times, like emotionally, there's a huge void there, man. Like it's not when you're coaching them, you're not just there for technical support. I actually feel that's a smaller number of the equation. It's there. Of course, it's important to be a good coach on the technical level, but I find that a lot of times in jiu-jitsu and MMA, the guys who are called the best coaches aren't really necessarily technical wizards. It's more the father figure, the emotional support, is just being like, hey, man, everything's going to be okay. I'm right here, right next to you, man. Like, we're going to warm up. We're going to win that fight. That's huge.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Because what you're saying, everybody says, oh, fighting is an individual sport. It's like, no, not really, right? You might fight there alone physically, but you're carrying a team on your back, or that team's supporting you because you didn't train yourself.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people train you, and there's just so much pressure and stress when you go to compete that having a good coach helps take some of that stress away from you. They make you a little bit more at home. They take some of that load from you, so that you can just focus on one thing. You know?
Yeah, I agree with both of you, and I think I think a reasoning behind that is if you look at martial arts, for example, if you want to make money doing martial arts, yeah, there's a million ways you could make more money, without taking the amount of damage and having to put as much work as you will put into martial arts. The same thing in acting. It's like the people that really follow that route are usually obsessed with something or running away from something. And for me, for example, I got into martial arts because I was petrified. I had no confidence. I was very scared. So I wanted to do something to give me that. And I think a lot of people got into martial arts and they may be socially awkward. They may not have any kind of intelligence outside of martial arts, and suddenly they become really good and people start listening to them. But the shit they're talking is no value at all. And it's a lot of time, I mean, we'd all see this the same thing. Actors get up there and they start talking about stuff they have no idea about, because no, look, you're an amazing actor because you've put all this time in acting, but you didn't put any time into anything else. So the value that you have is in teaching acting. Stick to that. Some people, obviously, like yourselves, have much more value everywhere else. But there's a lot of people that do that, and I think because, to really put the work in to become an actor, to become a martial artist, to become one of the best in the world, you have to put so much work in and sacrifice so much, and most normal people that are quite content are not going to do that. If you're quite happy with who you are and what you're doing, you're probably never going to become a martial artist. There's got to be certain reasons to push you in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's Robert mentioned it before too, there's a progression. And I started martial arts for the same reason, self-defense. But then the purpose changes.
Yeah.
Right? I think someone had posted on Instagram, what's the point of training martial arts or whatnot? It's like, well, for me, I think most people's path usually starts self-defense based at some point, but then it starts to change as you get more involved, right? Like you start competing or you start training a lot, and then it's like, oh, now I just want to get better. I want to prove myself. And that's what competition is really all about. It's proving yourself. And you're putting a hard challenge in front of you to see what you're made of.
It's the good ego.
Yeah.
Like we had Mike Musumesi here a while ago. We were talking about ego. Like ego is one of those things, if you steer it in the right direction and you internalize it, right? Like you're constantly in a state of being upset at yourself for not being better. That's a huge catapult. That's a trampoline, because the second you're content, why try? Why bother? Why push that threshold? If you're content squatting 200 or whatever, if you're content, like if I train with you and I tap you once and I'm completely okay with that, what is the likelihood of me tapping you twice tomorrow?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like you completely, and it's so convenient. Like, and this is one of probably me and Dave talk about this all the time, but it's such an important aspect of your growth as a martial artist or anything you do, is not to be accepting of where you currently stand.
That's
I was gonna say adding to that, for me now the point has changed again, right? Because I'm not competing anymore. I'm not going out there to prove myself anymore. It's now about self-mastery, right? Now I'm trying to build the best me that I can possible. Dieting, I'm starting to do weight training. I fixed my knee, fixed my shoulder. I'm trying to take care of myself for the long haul now, right? I think ultimately that's one of the ultimate goals once you mature yourself in the martial arts, because that's the goal that translates to all aspects of your life, right? Like everybody can be better. There's never a point where you're like, oh, I've achieved perfection. It hasn't happened for anybody yet. So I feel that's like the most mature goal that you can have, and that's what I'm striving to do, And I think a lot of people have it skewed now because the rise of social media and how easy it is to be famous. Now, not easy, but it's accessible to everybody, right? There was a time before internet where to get on TV, you had to have some amazing connections and know the right people. Where I think now you can build your own celebrity with good content. Which is awesome, because it gives kind of an equality now. Now, if you have powerful content,
it's democratic. It's opened up. But going back to what you said, you hit the nail on the head. You said, I'm working on self-improvement. I think a lot of people, they have their idea of success is what's wrong, because success does not, to me at least, maybe people can differ here and disagree, but success to me is what you said, being a better version of yourself every day, right? Whereas a lot of people think success is how much money you have or whatever, and I never felt that always felt that a shallow pursuit for a martial artist.
I think, I was getting to that, because what's happened now, when me and you got into the sport, there was no money in it. There was no fame. You were essentially going into someone's garage or something just to fight, just because you wanted the challenge. But now it's there is money, there is fame in MMA and somewhat in grappling. So you might get into it just to become famous. You know, like people who, you know, are in high school and they want to be in the NFL because they're like, oh, that's my meal ticket, right? You know, I don't come from a good upbringing, I don't have a good education, but I'm athletic, I can go into football and make something of myself, right? So I think now there's some of that in martial arts. So that's why I call it contrast between a fighter and a martial artist, where a fighter is like an athlete. He's just there because he's trying to be the best, make as much money, be as famous as possible. Whereas the martial artist is someone who like has gone through the whole journey and they're in it for the long haul.
It's an evolution.
Yeah.
I didn't think. I mean, I'm sure you didn't think like that 20 years ago. You
No,
know,
it's
I know
always
I didn't.
changing. Yeah.
I think this is the situation I'm in at the moment where I like competing because I step outside my comfort zone and I feel like I grow every single time. It's not so much, for me, it's not really about winning anymore. I mean, it'd be great to win, but I definitely don't care about it near as much as what most people do. For example, if I really cared about it, I'd be training 3 times a day. I'd be doing strength and conditioning. I'd probably be doing steroids as well. You know, I'd be doing everything I could to make sure that I win. But for me, it's more about just growing as a human and having fun, because I feel like now I don't have the pressure to compete really well. I'm doing it and I'm enjoying a lot more. The problem, on the other hand, is I'm also an online coach now, and I teach jiu-jitsu and I teach seminars, and I don't want people to misinterpret my ability to compete now in my broken state that I am physically and think, oh, that's what kid is and stuff like that. So that's kind of one thing that pushes me away from competition as much, because I know how heavy you're judged on it, and people don't understand what's going on. People don't know, like, oh, they just see you lose. They don't realize, okay, he hasn't been trained for 6 weeks because he got a knee injury and whatnot. And I still want to compete because I like competing, even if I'm not super fit. But that's the situation I'm in right now, and that's probably why I'm stepping away from competing so much and more working on the coaching, because I find I have a lot more enjoyment I get a lot more enjoyment. It's better for me to teach someone or to help someone get better than what it is for me to compete and show what my skills on a stage anymore. I just don't have that drive and that passion. But that's the situation I'm in. That's why I feel like I'm moving away from competition, and I'll still train when I do, but it'll be more for my own enjoyment than anything.
I think what a beautiful place it is to be able to train jiu-jitsu and not have to, it's not a life and death situation if you win or lose. Because I feel like I'm in that transition now after retirement, and I actually like jiu-jitsu more in a lot of ways now. Because like before, like if someone passed my guard, I'd be like, it's the end of the world,
Yeah.
No, seriously, like I'd lose if someone scored a point on me in practice, I'd lose it. Like now, I care, but not that much.
Yeah.
I cared less in a lot of ways, and I think that as a competitor, it's a horrible way of thinking, not caring. If you're a competitor, you're fighting,
It hurts your competition. You
should care, right?
Yeah.
On a very deep level, it should mean something to you. Whereas now, it's like I enjoy it for what it is. It's more of not a means to an end in the jiu-jitsu, because is becoming slowly, to me personally, an end in itself.
Yeah. And you guys obviously have other things that you're working on and building on yourself, and you can't spend all your time just doing jiu-jitsu if you want to develop as a human in every other area.
Yeah.
I think jiu-jitsu's got to be a part of it, of course, or it doesn't have to be, but it is a part of it. But there's so many different areas that we're working in, and for me, like I'm trying to work through the film industry right now, not just as an actor, but I want to write more. I want to learn how to direct eventually, and and probably get more in producing and stuff eventually. So there's so many things I need to learn in that area that takes away my time from being able to spend in that. But it's the same problem everyone has. But that's, I think, the biggest problem I've had in my career is I've always had 5 or 6 different things that I'm doing rather than just one. And I felt like if I just, let's say if it was just jiu-jitsu the whole time, I feel like I could have had a resume similar to yours and stuff like that. But but I had a lot of other things, so I feel like I definitely didn't do as well as what I could have. And some people sort of ask me that, do you feel like that? It doesn't bother me too much until they ask me that, and I'm like, oh, maybe a little bit. I don't think that till then. But I do have other things, and I think that for me, once the film and stuff blows up and starts doing really well, I'll be a lot more satisfied with, okay, I'm glad I did that. Yeah. But at the moment, it's like I had something I'm building, and I'm kind of leaving it there to go something down here that's like really nothing. And
It takes
it's
courage,
hard
though.
from that.
It takes courage. It's hard to do.
Yeah, but you're starting a new journey. You know, I think, like you said, like after you've been on a certain path for a while, it's not as stimulating because you've seen more. There's diminishing gains, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you're starting a new path, and I'm sure you're going to kill it.
Games. That's a good way to put it.
But I did want to ask you about the online coaching because I know that's something that you've transitioned into and you've done really well with it. And I think you also offer a very unique perspective. As most instructional courses and online stuff, they're focusing, okay, learn XYZ technique like this. Whereas I had the pleasure of joining you in a seminar and you're teaching it. And it's a very, very different approach where you're doing more about, like you said, the why of certain concepts, and it's kind of open-ended, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of a very unique twist on things. So I don't know if you can
Yeah.
talk about like how did you, I guess, go into that teaching mode, because most people don't really teach specifically that way. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like even myself, like I do teach like certain concepts when I teach like a kimura or something like that, but it's not completely conceptual. Like
Yeah.
yours is
Well,
more like
I think that straight away I teach like that because that's the way I like to teach and that's the way I learn jiu-jitsu. So I prefer to teach more theoretically than practically. And I think there's just so many people doing the practical stuff like yourself, so many amazing coaches that can teach technically and most likely better than what I can teach technically. But I've gone to a niche part of the industry that most people don't focus on, which is like the theoretical aspect of jiu-jitsu and understanding jiu-jitsu. So I feel like most people are teaching people what to do. I'm trying to teach people why they should do that. And I'm also trying to look at teaching people how to learn. I think like one of the most important things in learning anything is learning, like understanding how you actually learn. How does my brain, you know, figure this out? How does my brain absorb this information? So I've tried to really sort of corner that market of the game and steer away from techniques, because occasionally someone will ask me like, why don't you do some technique stuff? And it's like, it's already there.
It's plenty. Yeah, I agree with you.
Go to Rob's, go to Dave's. Like,
Yeah.
they've got the techniques there. But if you want the mental stuff, that's more what I do.
You know about the mental stuff. I think it's, first of all, it's far more important. I think it's the biggest, it's the most important thing in the whole equation here is how do we, you know, how to get your mind ready to win, right? There's a number of factors that go into that, and we can talk about that some other time, but like there's a hyper focus on the technique, I feel like. Everyone's like obsessed. If I only learn one more sweep from open guard, then I'll win a world title. I'm like, dude, you can have 2 sweeps or 1 and still win. There's all this other stuff. But the thing about the psychological aspect you're talking about, I'm actually curious to see your product, because like I'm not familiar with it, but like it is difficult to teach because you're talking about concepts, and you know a lot of it goes back to emotions too, and how your mind is wired. And some people, I think they really struggle with competition and, you know, being competitive. Like I've had people like walk up to me and go, Rob, I know what you're talking about, that I need to be more competitive. I just can't do it. And they're trying, you can see they're trying to change that about themselves, but they really struggle. And it's the psychological aspect is the most important, but it's hard to teach.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with that, you have to lead by example more than anything. And I definitely don't try and teach people to get into like that competitive mindset. It's more what I try and teach people is to understand how they learn things and how their brain works, and why certain things will help you, and to how to maximize your training to get the best results. And I feel like at the moment, most people, and it's like the 80-20 rule that Vilfredo Pareto come up with, that 20% of your results come from 80% of your actions, and 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. So I feel like I've found a good position and a good area that I can tell you what that 20% is, and get you to throw away the other 80% that gives you such little returns, and focus mainly on what that is, which is skill acquisition, which is what we talked about at the start. Just basically creating better problem solvers, which then creates better artists, because you go through it yourself. So all I'm really trying to do is create a platform to help people get the best out of themselves, because I think a lot of people get mistaken by trying to mechanically get the best out of someone. Like, I'm going to teach you how to get, how to be the best you are. You can't do that. All you can do is create a safe environment for them to develop that themselves. So I'm trying to do that. I've just created a product it's about, most of my products are like 1 hour long, and they're more specific on certain areas, like the art of learning jiu-jitsu was basically explaining my methodology of learning and how to change the way you look at jiu-jitsu to maximize the results. And it blew up. We sold I think 15,000 copies of that one.
I'm
and
stealing
got
your
great
idea,
feedback.
by the way. That's my next prize. We're in competition, kid.
Damn it.
Just open my mind. I'm not even bullshit. You actually gave me a lot of ideas.
Good. I think
I'm going to steal Kid's program.
it is a great thing. We should do something together.
I'm down, man. No, because what you're saying, man, is something I've always believed in. I've always thought. And I thought about, I'm going to open guard DVD. And I'm going, why on earth would I do it? You know how many times it's been done? I can't compete with Rafael Mendes there. I'm not going to be honest with you. I can't, But I feel that, what you're describing is something that maybe you can add something that is more important. And it might open a window. Because maybe they don't get all of it, right, kid? But if they sometimes, I'm sure this has happened to you guys, someone says something and it opens like a whole new set of doors. Like, oh, never thought about that, right? It's a concept. And it goes, and a whole world expands right in front of you. And that's huge, man. If you can do...
And I understand like your conceptual base, like, and I could see why you're apprehensive of drilling, because drilling doesn't generally encourage creativity, right? Like I said, the sequence I'm talking about, it's all orchestrated already, right? And in some of these drills, not all the drills are like that, but
they can generate inspiration though.
Yeah,
which I think is a good thing. So I think. And I'm not as against drilling as what most people do. It's more like it's a fun thing, and like that whole no drilling. I never ever enforced no one allowed to drill. They can drill. They can do whatever they want. All my students can do what they want. A guy made it, and I thought it was funny. But I think that like looking at, and I'll look at what you guys do, and I'm not necessarily, let's say, and if you show me something, I'm not going to go back and drill it heaps, but I'm going to look at it and I'm going to think about it, and it's going to be inspiration for when I'm in that position. Then I've got like something I know it's available, and I might be able to take half of it and go, I really like that half of it, but your legs are a little bit longer here, so it's probably going to create more issues here, and just it's all inspiration for me, and I think so. I think techniques are great for that, and I'm definitely not against that, and I think that people with technique videos, buy those videos. I never say don't buy someone's videos because they're telling you to drill on it. Do that, but don't go crazy with the drilling. Try and understand why those techniques work, which is a thing that most coaches really struggle to articulate. And I know you guys don't, because I remember especially when I first come to you and Kabaka were there, and I love the way you guys were teaching, because you were explaining like why we're doing certain things and more what was going through your head than just what you're physically doing. And you're the same, and you helped me a lot with the wrestling with that. And I wish more coaches would focus on that. And that's kind of like the new product that I've got, and I haven't named it yet. But it drops on the 12th of October. It's going to be 5.5 hours long, and it's going to basically cover like all the reasoning why I train the way I am, how to do it yourself, how to basically structure your training to get the best out of yourself. And I'm not pretending that I'm going to create any little clones of me. That's not at all what it's about. It's about giving you the same information that I had to get my black belt in 4 years, so that you can do the same thing, if not better, or however you want to do it. But that's what more, it's like a theory. It's more like a, when you go into a lecture than what it is. There's heaps of, physical stuff as well. And I show heaps of techniques and why I'm doing it, but I'm focusing mainly on the mental area of jiu-jitsu. And I'm actually really pumped to sell this. I shot it with really good quality. It cost me a fortune. The production value is going to be amazing. We just shot all this B-roll footage 2 days ago. My body can barely move now from it. So it's going to be like, I try to model it on, I don't know if you've ever seen the masterclasses online, just the general masterclasses, the same sort of platform.
I know of it.
Okay, so they're fantastic. I watch the acting ones all the time, directing ones, there's food, cooking ones. I've tried to go basically model that, which I feel like is a really good platform for learning.
Stop giving me ideas, kid.
And,
I'm going to steal them all.
And and then Robert are going to do one next, so I can't steal it. But that is the next step, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because the next step of this was, because I think BJJ fanatics have done good in the technical side of things.
Yeah.
But there's no, other than myself, I don't think anyone's really filming what we're talking about.
And it's saturated.
Yeah.
And there's one reason, people think, why don't you film, Rob? And I'm like, there's always part of me that I don't like doing what everyone else has done. Yeah. It's just a part of me. It's like, I like what you did, right? Because you got a move that everyone knew, but you created it you put it in a structured way that really helps people map it out, right? And I like that. I've never, that approach I like. But there's always a part of me, unless I'm showing something that no one's ever done before, I don't want to do it. Yeah. Or, what I'm saying? I'm more interested in being I don't know, just original, I guess.
Yeah.
One thing I want to do is, this is your opportunity to steal my my idea. Maybe it's not a great one.
Get my pen
You
out
tell me.
now.
But I always wanted to do something I've always done well is taking the back when the person's standing. You know, because I got a lot of that from MMA. So I want to do something like that, for example, right? Because people don't know how to take the back when the person's standing up. They think, they jump. Everyone wants to jump. You know, it's like probably the worst thing you can do. So that's the kind of stuff that's to me is interesting. But I love your approach because I feel it, like we were discussing, people focus on the technical side. To me, it's like, what color do you paint the wall? And that's great if you want to paint it white, brown, black, whatever color you want. But the structure, the blueprint.
Yeah. There's an algorithm behind that.
Yes, that is the most important aspect, and it's so hard to train. And me and Mikey and David, we talked about this extensively. But I think it's the key ingredient, man. Like, that's the common denominator. Because I know people that never drill the day of their life and win. I know people who drill a lot and win.
Hodge Gracie said the same thing in an interview recently. He's like, I never drill. I always do specific training. Look at him. Yeah,
but the common denominator, I think, is something else. Is what it's it's not the color of the wall. It's the wall itself.
One thing that's very important, and this is why your style of teaching is so good, is that you're focusing a lot on the mental aspect, right? And like Rob is saying, it's easy to understand a physical movement when you're watching a video, like, but what you're not seeing is what's happening in here, and this is arguably a lot more important because this is controlling everything else. And it's one thing I didn't mention, like when I'm doing my drills, there's also an emphasis of what's going through my head as I do the drill, So there's a specific
tangerine monkeys like ding ding.
A little jump. But there's a lot going on here that I have to orchestrate at the same time because essentially I want to, like a golfer, the key thing is having the right mental state when they hit the ball.
Yeah.
If they can always get the same mental state, they're going to get the same result, which is, getting a hole in one or whatever the case is. The same thing goes with your fighting, with your jiu-jitsu, or anything in your life. If you don't have the right mental state, the physical actions are not going to work right. Right? So a lot of the drilling that I do is focusing on that as well. But the drilling by itself doesn't give you the mechanical understanding that you're teaching, right?
You're kind of cloning, you're replicating.
You're replicating something. That's why I was talking about it doesn't inspire creativity in the sense that you're just doing this and you're going to get good at doing this, but then you don't know the next thing because you don't understand the physics behind the move or the reasoning or the timing. So
I used to do this in mathematics, and it'll be exactly what you're saying. I used to sit there and I'd look at my friend next to me, and I would see his answer, so I would put all his answers on me. And then it'd come to test day, and I'd be there, and he's like 10 meters away. So I'm like, fuck, I can't see what he's doing. I have no idea. I literally wouldn't even fill it out. The teachers would just know what's going on because I never really figured out the algorithm or the formula to those.
Yeah.
If I had been smarter, I would have said, okay, let me get my head around this formula. Or cared, yes.
Yeah.
Then I'll work it out. And that's what those kids, and I think what we're both touching on is there is a formula to everything. There is a formula to everything, and most people have figured it out. And I think when you're talking about painting walls, when I paint models as well, but I don't understand the color palette formula. So I don't know what colors work with what. But the really good people know that, and they have that all there. So they know that the greens and the browns and they have an earthly color, and they give you a certain feeling. If we go to music, okay, I know how to imitate people's songs, okay, but I have no idea about music. But if you look at the blues scale, which is a certain scale, if you learn that, I think it's like 89 or 90% of all songs use the blues scale. So you can find that.
Is.
The blues scale, yeah. We need to figure that out, mate. I do as well. Someone taught me a little bit, but I wasn't interested enough to figure out the blues scale. But if I did, my guitar work would be 100 times better. And I think that what all three of us offer that we really need to focus on is we know the scales, the algorithms for what we do. And that's what we need to give students rather than just showing, okay, this is the outcome I came up with. We need to give them the information so that they can come up with the same, or their own outcome and create their own artists. Because if you look at all three of us, we're very unique. We're not imitations of anyone. Your style's very unique, my style's unique, your style's unique. And people need to understand that they have to do the same route. If they really want that mastery or anything like that, that's the way it is. There's no fast tracking it. There's no copy these techniques and copy these techniques and then you're going to be amazing. No, you need that information behind there and you need to come up with yourself. And that's why I feel like the conceptual route, which we all teach in and which I'm selling online, is going to be the future of teaching jiu-jitsu. And I think more and more people are starting to figure it out. It's just, there's a lot of people holding on to old things.
It's hard. Because sometimes I'll bring it up in class, And you can see that people are interested because I think they recognize it's important, but I'm not sure. You know, like how many things about yourself that you got to change, you know what to do, but you fall into the habits of not changing it. Like I have things like that all the time, right? It's very difficult, but I think me and Dave were talking about this a while ago. You just got to keep reminding yourself. Yeah. Remind yourself until you create that, that pathway in your brain, and it's just it's awareness, right? The number one step getting caught in the triangle, not getting caught in the triangle, is recognizing you're about to get caught in the triangle. Yeah.
And I think that as you teach, the more you teach like that, the more you start figuring out easier ways to get your students to understand what you're saying and to really engage in. When I first started teaching this way, it would see the same sort of thing, like people going listening, and because I wasn't really articulating it well. Now when I do seminars, it's crazy. People sitting there like this, like listening everywhere. And they're like, yes. Yeah. Because I feel like I knew, like at first I had to become self-aware of what was I doing and why was I doing it, and then how can I give that to them? And there's amazing athletes everywhere that are not self-aware, and if they can't give what they're doing to that student, they have zero value in a coaching sense. Yes. And I think that because I know you guys so well, and I know you guys coach that, it is a waste for you not to really get that stuff online more for more people to see. Because I know it's done.
We're going to have a business discussion after this podcast. Me, David, and Kit, sit down, put together like an amazing product. No, I 100% agree with you, Kit. I think that, well, you know what? Overall, just to summarize the conversation, I love what we're talking about is it's the evolution of the sport, like how much it's evolved. Even like instruction now is getting to a much higher level. My first instructor in Brazil, it's still probably the way he learned. It was literally like, go. Not even set the timer. It was just like he'd sit down and say, go. And you just grabbed your partners, whoever it was. But watching from that to what we're talking about here is huge. I mean, we're talking about scientific research that is backing this methodology versus that methodology. And, I really appreciate that evolution. I as a passionate practitioner of the sport, I love how far we've come.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Agreed.
Well, Kit, thank you very much for participating in the show. Let the people know where they can find your new course.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been an awesome conversation. I love hanging out with you guys, so I really appreciate it. You can find my stuff at kitdaletraining.com. I have all my products there. I think there's 7 products. And the new product I will be launching online. So if you want to follow me at Kit Dale Official on Instagram or Kit Dale on Facebook, I'll be posting it about there, but it's going to be a different platform that we put that new product on because it's 5.5 hours long. We're going to use a different program called Teachable, which will be different on itself, which I'm super excited about.
So we'll put some links in the description as well.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for watching. Thank you for being here, Kit. Like this was a lot of fun. It was one of our best ones yet. I had a blast, and I'm sure we'll do this again. You're in Hollywood, so you're gonna have to come back here one of these days.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, guys. All right, take care.